This video is brought to you by NordVPN. For Apollo 11's 50th anniversary, I've created a little mini-series looking at different aspects of the moon landing. In the last episode, I looked at the descent and how the lunar module was designed. And this time, I'm looking at the walk. The moon might seem silent and in some ways almost peaceful, but the surface is actually a pretty violent place. It's thought that each one of those craters, big and small, that you see on the surface have been created by asteroids or meteoroids colliding with the moon since its formation. Now there are billions of these craters littering the lunar surface, ranging in size from the minuscule all the way up to 2,500 kilometers wide, which have been created over billions of years of impacts. And massive amounts of the dust on the surface have been created by rocks being slowly worn down by being repeatedly impacted by meteoroids and micrometeoroids. This is a lot like how water and wind break down and smooth out rocks here on Earth. Except on the moon, there's no air or water to do that job. And just as an additional little fact, impacts like these and processes like these have led to mountains on the moon becoming smooth. So that is a lot of impacts. It's estimated that the moon gets struck by thousands of kilos of meteoroid material every single day, which is like hundreds of thousands of rocks around this size impacting the moon every day. But it's spread out over vast distances across the entirety of the lunar surface. So it's extremely unlikely that an astronaut that's walking around on the moon would actually get struck by one of these. But it is still possible that they could get hit. And if it did happen, it's possible that it could be by a tiny type of meteoroid called a micrometeoroid. So what would have happened if Neil Armstrong or Buzz Aldrin were hit by one of these during the Apollo 11 mission? Well, that is where the genius of the Apollo spacesuit came in. It's been called an astronaut's personal spacecraft because it performs everything needed to keep an astronaut alive in the vacuum of space, kind of like a spacecraft. But at the start of the Apollo program, a spacesuit that was capable of setting foot on the moon hadn't been invented, so NASA needed to create something completely new. The development and the testing phase of the Apollo spacesuit went through a whole heap of challenges, and a bunch of designs were created, some a little less familiar than others. But what the teams involved in its creation eventually landed on is the spacesuit that we know today, and it's called the A7L spacesuit. And one of the things it was designed to deal with? That's right, micrometeoroid impacts. Okay, so the suit consisted of three main parts. First was a liquid cooling garment, made up of a mesh with tubes running through it that sent cool water around the body to regulate temperature. Next was the pressurized suit itself. And lastly was the portable life support system, the PLSS, more commonly known as the backpack. And the classic white of the suit that we know and love today is where the protection came from. But it was actually just an outer layer, covering up the internal torso limb assembly, which is the part of the suit that was pressurized to keep the astronaut alive in the vacuum of space, by stopping things happening like their blood boiling, which I'm sure you can agree wouldn't be too great. So this outer layer was called the Integrated Thermal Micrometeoroid Garment, and you can probably guess from its name what its functions were. Two of its main jobs were to protect the astronauts from thermal hazards and from micrometeoroid impacts. It consisted of 13 layers of material, including rubber-coated nylon, aluminized mylar, and fire-resistant Teflon-coated beta filament cloth. A lot of these layers acted as thermal insulation, which is great considering that temperatures on the surface of the moon fluctuate between 107 degrees Celsius and minus 153 degrees Celsius. And using these materials, this outer layer was also designed to absorb the impact of a micrometeoroid if it were to hit it, reducing the risk of any serious damage to the suit. But even if a space rock did cause damage, there were so many layers that it was really unlikely that it could penetrate all the way through the suit and pierce a hole in the pressurized inner suit. Alright, so they pretty much had that covered for certain impact scenarios. But let's just say that a meteoroid, or just something sharp, did impact the suit and pierce through the pressurized layers. What would happen? Well, that is where another genius aspect of the suit would come into play: the backpack. You see, that backpack had a lot going on inside of it. It pressurized the suit, it supplied breathing oxygen, removed carbon dioxide, particulates and odors, and it provided cooling and controlled humidity. And it even had a backup system if the main system failed. Now, in the case of a tear, it's likely that oxygen would be slowly leaking into the vacuum of space through the hole. And in this scenario, the backpack would try to compensate by pumping more oxygen into the suit to make up for some of the losses, which would probably provide the astronauts with enough time to get back to the relative safety of the lunar module. So essentially what I'm trying to say is that a small hole in their suits probably wouldn't lead to instant death. Now, spacesuit technologies and general ideas that were developed for the Apollo 11 spacesuit are still being used in spacesuits to this day, which just goes to show yet again what an incredible legacy the Apollo space program has left. Now, let's just hope that no astronaut has to face being hit by a meteoroid anytime soon. But if they do, we can at least know that the Apollo program has their back. So just like how the astronauts were protected from the vacuum of space by their spacesuits, you need protection whilst using the internet. And that is exactly what today's sponsor can provide you with. NordVPN is my favourite provider of virtual private networks, which make it harder for malicious things to happen to your devices and make it so people and companies online don't know who or where you are. And they do this by encrypting the data that's going into and coming out of your devices. NordVPN is fast, it has thousands of servers across the globe, and it has iOS and Android apps, so you can use it for mobile browsing. And I like to use it whenever I need that extra little bit of security when I'm doing things online. So head over to nordvpn.org/aspectscience, or just use the link that's down in the description below and get 75% off your NordVPN subscription, which brings it down to just $2.99 a month, which is great. But this is NordVPN's final sale, and this offer will be expiring soon. So make sure that you take advantage of it before September. So that's nordvpn.org/aspectscience, or use the link that's down below. So a massive thank you to the nice people over at NordVPN for supporting this episode, and also to the Aspect Science patrons, which make all of this possible on a monthly basis. Thank you so much. Now make sure that you head over to Seeker, because I've collaborated with Seeker, Now This, Verge Science and Vox and a couple of other channels to create a playlist that is dedicated to Apollo 11's 50th anniversary. And it includes some really great videos which I know you're going to enjoy. So that is it for this episode, so until next time, you keep discovering the world around you, and I'll see you then.